As you know, we do a question and answer session. And this time around, I looked at the questions, so I made some notes here. I've got some notes, but we have good questions. Some are hard questions, some are really easy. And I think we're ready to get going on that. Can we get the questions up on the screen, please? Question number 1, the operator assault workshop. That was something that was recently introduced to us. It was not something that we had planned for a long time. There's a pilot project in Charlotte, I think it is. Ruby, Brenda, is that right? And then we thought that that was really good stuff. We talked to the people who were funded to put this together. They contacted us, and we spent some time discussing it and talking to our bus vice presidents. We thought that was a very good thing that we could present at the region meetings, because we're always looking for things to keep our bus people engaged and excited about being here, because there's a lot of rail stuff. But in getting into it, I discovered that it's far more than just bus. Operator assaults, first of all, that happens in all of our transit issues. We have transit companies from coast to coast, Florida, New York, New Jersey, California, all over Denver. And operator assaults are as big an issue there as they are on the bus systems that we represent. And in addition to that, it bleeds over into security in the railroads overall. And you all know what the security situation is, even on the freight railroads. It's not what it needs to be. And so we've committed, and this I'll go back to a little bit of feedback we got. All of the bus people that sat through that session that talked to me came and said that was a wonderful session. They want to expand it. They need more of it. They want more. And they wanted to know about how this can be brought out not only to other properties, but to their properties all over the country. And I'm not sure what the answer is from a nuts and bolts standpoint, how we roll that out to get it everywhere, but we do recognize the need to roll it out, get it everywhere, expand it to the rail operations, and we're going to work with Dan Collins and his group to make that happen. And we're going to be calling on the people that did the pilot project to make sure that we get it to happen, because it's an absolutely critical thing. I know that John Risch and Greg Hines have been working in Washington on operator assaults. It's been one of those unwieldy issues. I think these guys have hit a program that works. They go out there, they study the operation, they find out, as Dan said the other day, if you move a bus stop 2 blocks, you may eliminate all of the adverse things that could happen at that one stop, just by moving the bus stop. So there are things that they look at there, they have methods in place. We're going to expand it, we're going to do everything we can to get it nationwide, because we believe it's a really, really good program. Question 2. This is one of those questions that's not so easy. I believe that the organization in both the international level and the general committee levels, and even as it bleeds over into the legislative department with hours of service issues, have all sat down to discuss better work-rest issues and proper rest at home. The problem is that we haven't been successful in pulling satisfactory outcomes over the finish line. The railroads continually stonewall. They don't want to give you an 8-hour call. They don't want to give you protected time off. They don't want to tell you you're going to have days off on an extra board. That all interferes with their operation. I am not at all satisfied with where we are with this. We work with the general committees. We bring it up in national negotiations. Every chance we get at the local level, you'll recall, most of your extra boards and things such as that come from crew consist agreements, different things that are on property agreements. We work with the chairman. We don't come in as the international and tell them what to do, but we do offer our support and assistance. We're not where we need to be on this issue. I think as an industry, basically as a country, we haven't done enough. For the American public, probably doesn't even realize to the extent that people are out here, they're fatigued, they're being handled in such a way that they can't get proper rest no matter how hard they try. It's one thing if somebody is out goofing off and not getting the rest they need to go to work. That's an issue. But a different issue is when you're doing everything you can after you've been here for 30 years, you know what you're supposed to do, and yet you still don't have the information you need to do it well and show up for work rested. That's criminal, and we need to do something to stop it, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to make that happen. That's the best answer I can give you. Question 3, please. This is an easy one. Members can contribute to PAC in the state they reside. The issue that we have here, this is a little bit kind of an IT issue. Our normal process for PAC contributions comes with your union dues. You sign up for PAC and you put down payroll deduction, and that's all geared to the treasurer of the local to which you belong. So when you make that deduction, even if, and it happens a lot in the east, some in the west, if you live in Connecticut and you work in Rhode Island, your local's in Rhode Island, you make a PAC contribution through payroll deduction, your PAC contribution is going to go to Rhode Island, even though you live in Connecticut. The way to get around that, the workaround, because the IT systems can't separate residence versus work location, but the workaround is just don't do a payroll deduction. You can make a direct contribution to the PAC state of your choice through the Cleveland office, and it'll be processed the same as if it was payroll deduction. It's just we'll do it internally in Cleveland. So this problem can be fixed. It's something, if anybody wants to do that, get a hold of someone in my office. We'll tell you exactly how you set it up. It's not an issue. We can handle it. Next question, please. I'm going to read this one. Given the ongoing advancements in technology such as Leader, Trip Optimizer, PTC, et cetera, and the subsequent ability of the carriers to use this technology in place of a human to operate trains, what is our organization's plans at the international level in ensuring our members are protected against the potential for massive layoffs in the upcoming years? I'm going to remind the bus people, this is the same question for them. Anybody that works on moving equipment needs to be interested in this question, because we've all seen it, the Google cars, the autonomous driving, the threats that they're going to be on the road next year. You're going to be calling a taxi and there'll be no driver behind the wheel, if there even is a wheel. Some companies say you don't need a wheel anymore. Personally, I'm not convinced that that's where we end up. I think that there are certain things in autonomous driving that we as human beings aren't going to tolerate. Human error is one thing. People get in accidents, they cause serious injury, sometimes death. We tolerate that to a degree because we know that people make mistakes. But we're not going to tolerate that out of machines. We're not going to tolerate that out of robots. We're not going to tolerate that out of cars that drive themselves. Also, I don't think we're going to tolerate, for whatever the speed limit is, you're not going to program an autonomous driving car to exceed the speed limit, right? So you're going to have thousands of little white boxes driving down the freeway at 55 miles an hour. That's going to drive people crazy. I think that there's just so much to consider. I think just because the technology is there doesn't mean that it's ready for acceptance by the American public. Having said that, it is here, and you all know. We've seen the videos of the buses without drivers on them. It hasn't really been implemented too much yet. Protected rights of way, maybe. We all know Leader, Trip Optimizer, PTC, all of that is designed to take the human element out of operating a train. And what we're doing as an organization to work against that, to work for what we believe is a safer and better operation, and we've already started this. This is old news to us. We've been working at this in Washington, in the state houses, for a long time now. We don't buy into autonomous driving. We don't buy into Leader, Trip Optimizer. They can be useful tools under some circumstances. They can also be distractions. To sit in the locomotive cab and have screens all over and buzzers going off and beepers going off and this and that and the other when you're trying to focus on what you're charged to do, right, which is move the train safely from one point to another. We believe the safety aspect of taking one person, let alone two people, out of that picture is unacceptable. And we fight that every day. That's the essence behind our two-person crew. We're going to continue to fight it. We're going to continue to monitor the autonomous driving thing. We're working in those arenas. I think that it's sort of like you don't fire the fire department because you haven't had a fire for 2 weeks. It's the same thing. We're essential on-board first responder emergency personnel. They need to be on a busload of people, freight train 10,000, 16,000, 20,000 feet long. Multiple units. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we're going to continue to fight. We're doing everything we can from the legislative arena. It's more difficult in today's environment. We were making better progress a year ago than we're making today, but things are still fleshing out. Maybe I'm ever the optimist, but I still believe that there's room for the American public and its legislators to realize the safety concerns and considerations involved in crew reduction. This is not checking yourself out at the grocery store. This is moving a hazardous material freight train through cities and towns across our country. It's not the same thing. We're doing everything we can to convince them of that. We've been doing it for a while, and we'll continue to do it. Next question, please. Good question. Actually, I'm going to expand on this a little bit. It's not only FELA, it's railroad retirement. It's a number of different things, regulatory. And I'll go back to a meeting we had in January of this year. As you all know, there was an election in November. I'll talk about that in a little while. That sort of changed the playing field a little bit. People weren't really sure to some degree what the impact of the new administration would be on a number of issues. And so we sat down with the Association of American Railroads, and this is rail labor. I was there, Rich was there, and a number of vice presidents were there. And we had a conversation with Ed Hamburger. He is the president of the Association of American Railroads. And it was a good discussion. And frankly, he told us what we needed to hear, which is, number one, the railroads are not in favor of changing the Railway Labor Act to have anything to do with eliminating the exception that we don't have to be under right to work, which is one of the proposals that's out there. When John talked this morning about the congressman from Iowa and one from North Carolina introducing a right-to-work bill, that right to work, a national right to work, that national right to work included an exemption or removed the exemption for the Railway Labor Act. So that what the intent was that would apply to us in the railroad industry, which it's never done before. So we sat down with Ed Hamburger, and he said, number one, they're not interested in doing that. They have no, they will support not doing that. They don't want to take away the Railway Labor Act exemption to right to work. And then another thing he said is they're not interested in railroad retirement change. They believe that over the years, labor and management has gotten together and done a fine job in managing railroad retirement. So it's a responsible program. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. It's self-funded. You all know, I mean, it's a pretty heavy hit on our paychecks, but we've been contributing for years. The railroads contribute as well, and there's no need to touch railroad retirement. Now that's an interesting thing, because every time we get a new bunch of congressmen come in, the first thing they want to do is attack railroad retirement. They don't need to. Just leave it alone. It doesn't affect the bottom line on the national budget. It's not hurting any industry. It's fine. And we've been successful. Our legislative department in D.C. has been successful in preserving that, but it's a struggle. Anyway, Ed Hamburger, the president of the AAR, also committed that they were not going to support any legislation to make changes to railroad retirement that weren't first agreed to by labor and management. That was pretty good stuff. However, I've been told things by railroad management before that didn't seem to pan out. This time around, he came through. We have a formal letter where he sets forth that position, and it was sent to all of the rail labor presidents, and it's a pretty strong commitment. It's not 100%. It's at this time we're not interested, da-da-da-da-da. But the fact of the matter is that to get a letter like that out of the Association of American Railroads is pretty powerful stuff. To get back to this question, it didn't make it to the letter, but in the same conversation, they committed that they had no intent to do anything to change FELA. And for bus people, that's the Federal Employer Liability Act. If you're hurt on the railroad while at work, that's what governs your compensation, like workers' comp in the private sector and the other sector. So it's a very important thing. It's something that our DLCs work with. Our members get reimbursed for lost time, damages, personal injury, that kind of a thing. And so that was a very positive conversation with the AAR. And as of right now, and we always have our eye on them. We've been lied to before. But as of right now, they're saying all the right stuff, and we're going to hold them to it. That's all for that question. Hey, this is a good news one. Are we there yet, Eric? John? John? All right. Let me give you a little history on this. last year we had a meeting with our yard masters, and this has been something that's been discussed, talked about for a lot of years, and that is hours of service for yard masters. And on the one hand, it was mixed. Some yard masters think it's a good thing to work 16 hours, get double time, that kind of a deal. Most of the yard masters didn't think that was so hot. They don't mind 12 hours, they don't want 16. It's been a back and forth discussion for a lot of years now. And it's kind of come to a head this past year when we were at a meeting in New Orleans. We had all the yardmaster general chairmen there. We sat them down. We said, hey, what do you guys want to do with this? And unanimously, they declared that they wanted to introduce a bill to get hours of service for yardmasters along the same lines as what we all know in the rail industry for the operating people. Unbelievably, we said, okay, fine, that's our official policy, our official project. Unbelievably, I can't say highly enough about John, Greg, and Eric and what they've managed to accomplish. We have a congressman now that has not only agreed to introduce the bill, he's enthusiastic about it. He's he wants to be the sponsor, or what's the right term, the sponsor of the bill. He is chomping at the bit. The language has been going back and forth. He wanted to introduce on Monday. Larry Mann today is looking at the language. We should get it dropped here in the next few days. Very good. And this is in a Republican administration, and I think that it may actually go through, which would be a wonderful thing. And it would be a wonderful thing not only because we're getting what we want to get out of the legislation itself, but it's an exhibition of our ability to move stuff through this Congress. That would be a very nice thing to have out there. So again, it's very positive work in progress, and I'll be happy to report back next year that we got it done, hopefully. Next question, please. Oh boy, what a difference a year makes. I stood before all of you who went to last year's meeting, either in Chicago or in San Francisco, and I said, pretty much, don't worry about Hunter, he's retiring. And he did, for a while. Now he's back. He did a $300 million shakedown on CSX, and you want to know the really disturbing news about that is he extorted $300 million from the company in exchange for his future services, and the stock price rose 30%. The stock price rose 30%. The stockholders voted on an $84 million bonus to him just because he left his other job early. Now, this is money from a company that has been crying to us in national negotiations about reduced revenues, loss of traffic, coal's down, 30-some% of their revenue was coal at one point. Now it's down to 11% or something along that line. And they're handing out hundreds of millions of dollars. But the stockholders like it because he has a reputation from his prior railroad experiences of going in, cutting, slashing, doing everything he can to streamline the operation and making more money. Well, that sounds good if you're a stockholder. You like that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is he does it at the expense of the company, at the expense of the organization. He parks locomotives, he doesn't buy new and he uses old ones, he doesn't maintain as well. When he was trying to take over Norfolk Southern, he said on more than one occasion, we don't need to buy any new locomotives, we'll use the old ones. We don't need to maintain that track at that level, that's too high a cost of maintenance. He does that sort of a thing. He's not managing the company for a better result from operations, he's harvesting income that should have been put towards other more important things for the wealth of the company, not the stockholders, for the benefit of the employees, not the stockholders, for the benefit of America, not the stockholders. So that's what we're up against. The good news is, if there is any in this, is that he hasn't really focused in on the operating people in the railroads that he's done this before. Already they've laid off 2,000 managers on CSX. He focuses on doing the cuts that he can do as soon as he can do them, but he realizes you need people to work on the railroad. You need people actually on the trains to make the trains move. And he's done things such as close down hump yards because he doesn't think they're efficient, but he's transferred that switching to flat switching yards, which doesn't really cost jobs. In some cases, it adds jobs. He has taken off remote control assignments and put on regular assignments because he thinks remote control is inefficient. So in some aspects, there are things to work with. Now, to get into what might happen to CSX, it's going to look different. We're going to do everything we can to have the smallest impact possible on our members on CSX. But with respect to what's going on, I think the next question, I'm going to leap ahead a little bit here, is about national negotiations. And one of the interplays here between CSX is that they are in national handling. Hunter Harrison does not like national handling. He doesn't like normal railroad agreements. He wants to go to hourly agreements. He does not want to pay a trip rate, a 300-mile run, 3 days pay. He doesn't like initial switching. He doesn't like final switching. He doesn't like trip rates. He doesn't like any number of things. You name it, make a list on the railroad typical agreements that we have. He doesn't like any of that. He wants an hourly rate. It'll be high. He likes to pay high hourly rates, but he doesn't want any rules. On some railroads that he's been on before, if you're a road guy and you get in 9 hours, you've got 3 hours left to work. You need to go switch that industry over there. You need to take this cut of cars, switch them out and spot them up. It's a different operation. He hasn't approached this yet. He has said that he firmly believes that's the better way to go, but he has also said that he's not moving out of national negotiations. So for the time being, with respect to our interests on that property, he's in national negotiations, we're doing a national contract, and he's a part of it. At some point, I fully expect that he will be visiting with the chairman to talk about hourly rates and reduction in work rules. When that time comes, we'll be there to assist, and we'll see where it takes us. Hopefully the other railroads don't get too excited about this. John Lesniewski and I went and met with the senior leadership team at UP Railroad here a while back, and this had to do, any of you off of UP know what the discipline situation has been there. And at the request of the chairman, we made a visit to Omaha and sat down with Lance Fritz, Cameron Scott, and other senior management people. And we had a discussion about discipline, but as you might imagine, the discussion went for quite a while, and we talked about other things. One of the things we talked about was CSX Hunter Harrison. And Lance Fritz said that all of them, all the railroads, are now looking over their shoulder, because the stockholders saw that 30% bump in price on CSX stock, and they'd like a little of that action too. And so you're going to see pressure on the other railroads to make themselves look like what Hunter Harrison did. They know, most of the roads know that that's not a good long-term plan for the health and maintenance of the railroad industry, but they're getting that pressure from stockholders. And so it's going to be an interesting thing. It's in motion, it's developing, it'll probably stretch out for a few more years before the dust settles, but we'll be there, we're on it, we'll see what happens, and we're going to do everything we can to protect the interests of our members. Next question, please. Well, what a difference a year makes. I think I already said that. Last summer, again, San Francisco and Chicago, we had a similar question, only it was more the update on national negotiations. And at that time, I said that it was looking as if something good was developing. But keep in mind, that was last summer. We had negotiation sessions scheduled for September and October. And when I left the September meeting, I told our team, we have a negotiating team, represents all the railroads, all the crafts, and I told our team that I felt that we were making progress. It seemed to me at the time that the railroads had given up on a political outcome that would be helpful to them in negotiations, so they were willing to move forward. Basically, they thought Clinton was going to win. There was no chance Trump was going to win. And so we started doing real discussions. We started moving the pieces towards a settlement. I was feeling pretty good about it. Had another session in October, and we were almost there. We almost had an agreement. Guess what happened? November. The election came. Changed everything. We met at the end of November in our meeting. We had a September, October, November meeting. When we went back after the election for the November meeting, they said, oh, never mind. They took what they had done before, did that to it. We went right back, not even to square one. We went back to worse than square one. It was absolutely amazing to see the turnaround. And I'm not pointing any fingers at Trump. He didn't do anything to cause that. But the railroads feel then and still feel that their interests are better served in a Republican environment where if we do end up on strike or in a presidential emergency board, the appointees from a Republican administration are going to be much more favorable to management than it will be to employees. If you look back over the past number of years, there have been quite a few presidential emergency boards, mostly in the transit, but not always. We pretty much won everything we asked for. On Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Transit, we got exactly what we asked for. The Presidential Emergency Board said, no, Mr. Railroad, you can't do that. These guys are making a reasonable request, and they imposed what we were wanting to get. That's bad precedent for the railroads. However, this time around, the railroads are looking at it. They didn't want to do that under Democratic administration, so that's why we were making progress. Once that changed, I think they think they're rolling the dice, but the dice are loaded in their favor. And so as of this time, they're willing to roll the dice. We have another session scheduled. Let me back up. After that November session, we all saw that we're going nowhere, that this is not going to be productive. We invoked mediation. We asked for the National Mediation Board to assist. They assigned a mediator. And all of rail labor, there are 3 different groups. We're part of one group. There are 2 other groups. All of rail labor is in the same position. We're in mediation. We have 3 different mediators. There are 3 different groups mediating. We've accelerated our sessions so that we're meeting every few weeks now. We just met a couple of weeks ago. We're meeting again at the end of the month in Cleveland. And so we have accelerated sessions in mediation with national negotiations. This last time around, we were in Washington, D.C., and the session just kind of wasn't going anywhere. Some of us have a personal relationship with the senior members of the National Mediation Board. We made some phone calls, and rather than leave it with the mediator that was assigned at the lower level, we had Linda Pachala, the chairwoman of the National Mediation Board, visit that afternoon. She came to our session. She not only came to our session there, she came to our follow-up session 2 weeks after that in St. Louis, and she'll be at our next session in Cleveland. She is making some things happen. I don't know if she's going to be successful in getting them to come to where they need to be in the middle, but she's making them have real discussions. She is reaching out to the CEOs and telling them what their exposure is should they decide to not make a reasonable agreement. And so it's a work in progress. Unfortunately, as I said, we not only went back to 0, we went below 0, and now we're crawling back out of the hole. Frankly, I'm not confident. I don't really know where this is going to go. They have made demands on our health care that's not acceptable. I can't agree to them, let alone bring them to you for ratification. I wouldn't bring you a bad agreement. And what they're offering right now is a bad agreement. They want concessions in health care that will dramatically increase the out-of-pocket costs for our members. They want to give us general wage increases that won't even cover our increased costs for the health care. They're not even doing a quid pro quo. They're willing to make us pay a lot more on health care and only give us small increases that won't even cover the health care changes. So there's no agreement there. We've made a number of different efforts. It's slow, it's tedious. We've said, okay, what if we don't touch health care? What kind of wage increases can you talk about? They thought about that for 2 or 3 sessions and came back and said, no, we have to touch health care. We've offered an equivalent amount. There are all kinds of actuarial value calculations and analysis that you can do. Okay, you want this health care change, it's worth this much. We've offered to give them an equal amount, and this is all in discussion, an equal amount of GWI benefit that matches the dollar equivalent of what they're proposing on the health care side. And they said, absolutely not, we're not going to go for that. We want health care. You guys, that's all of us, are out of the mainstream. They have analysis for working people in the United States that includes management types who are always beat up on their health care, Walmart workers, fast food workers, all these plans where the guy at the local McDonald's says, I give my employees health care. Yeah, the problem is they can't afford it, so none of them take it. That's what they compare us to, and that's what they want us to be. They say, we're out of the mainstream. I tell them we bought and paid for that health care over the years. We've given up wage increases. We've given up work rules. We've done things that make our people entitled to that level of benefit. We're highly paid professionals. We're not McDonald's workers. We're not Walmart workers. And we deserve the health care plan that we negotiated. I'm not going to say that word that some people call an impasse, but we're not making a lot of progress. At some point, there are going to be some tough decisions to make. I think in my last column in the newspaper that we send out, also on the website, I told people, sign up, get involved, get the app, check the LAN on the website. We want everybody to be ready to respond when the time comes, whether that be contacting Congress, contacting your legislator, getting ready for a picket line if necessary. We need mobilization. Educate, organize, mobilize. We're talking real mobilization here. It could happen. Don't want it to go there. We want a voluntary agreement. Every organization is doing everything it can to get there. But unless they back up and get reasonable, we're going to end up going nowhere good. So the message is, I don't want to kill this for everybody. I want you to take the message back to the locals and to the membership. We're working at it. We're trying. We want a voluntary agreement. We're doing everything we can to get one. But despite what BNSF puts out on their website, they are not making reasonable offers. Any of the offers that we've received so far, first of all, I would be ashamed to put them out there. But if I did, they would go down 99% to maybe 1%. You guys wouldn't accept it. They're not good offers. So that's where we are in national negotiations. The reason, to go back to the question, actually, I kind of diverted a little bit. Why are there no updates on national negotiations in the TD News or the website? Two reasons. First of all, there's not a lot to report. I think we do release periodically. I think I've said in a number of my columns that we continue to seek voluntary agreement. But there's another reason. You don't negotiate in the press. You just, despite what one of the other guys said, there are three groups. One of the groups posted everything on their website. You can see the company's offer. Go out there and read it. You can find it. Read it. If you like it, let me know. I'd be interested in that. But the fact of the matter is, you don't negotiate in the press. When there comes a time that we want your input, we need your input, we have things to talk about, we'll put it out there, we'll ask for your input. We'll say that here's where we are, we need to hear from you, that kind of a thing. If we want to get a message to you that we're asking you to do something, we'll let you know. But in the meantime, negotiations are in a room behind closed doors, and that's how it stays. I'm being as forthright with you as I can be on progress, on what they're searching for, what we're trying to accomplish, but the details of the blow-to-blow is counterproductive to a voluntary agreement. We can't go there. And I think that the other organization will probably regret that they went there at some point. But again, if you want to find out what they've been offering, go take a look. It's on the web. Just not on our site. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here they are. We're announcing next year's meetings. There's one little qualifier. The agreement for Hollywood, Florida has not yet been signed, but it's 99% there. So these will be the dates, these will be the locations. And of particular interest is that the Eastern Regional Meeting in Hollywood, Florida, and if any of you been to the convention at the Diplomat, you're familiar with it. It's a big place. The convention center is adjacent to it. There's a lot of room. And what we're going to do this time around, for the first time ever, is the sheet metal side of our organization has a meeting similar to this that they do one time annually. It's called their Business Agents Conference, David. Is that it? And it's about the same size, 500 people, thereabouts. The Diplomat in Hollywood is big enough. We're not having a combined meeting, but we're going to have two meetings at once. So we're going to have 1,000 SMART members in the hotel there. We'll probably combine the Sunday night reception, maybe a dinner, that kind of a thing. But it'll be a chance to get together and see what the merged organization looks like when it gets to be that size. And that's in Hollywood, Florida. The one in Seattle will be, under the normal circumstances, just us TD folk. All right, thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate your being here. I want to hear your feedback. We need your evaluations. Have a safe trip home.